To just share something. I had the opportunity to preach yesterday morning at our main service because our lead pastor is out of town. And so I talked about, we've been in this series about like gratitude. And so I was talking about a little bit about how like we have this balance between gratitude and ingratitude. And what happens for us a lot of the times, just as people, I think we have a tendency to lean into like ingratitude and like ungratefulness. I think that happens for a variety of different reasons, but primarily I think a lot of it comes from like comparison. So I think sometimes we fall into like ingratitude because we look at the neighbor across the street and like, oh man, their house looks nicer than mine, or they got a nicer car than mine, their yard looks better than mine. And so all of a sudden we become a little bit like ungrateful for the fact that we have a house, that we have a front yard that we can, take care of, or that our kids can play in, or whatever. We forget that we have a car that takes us to our jobs or whatever. And so we have this like ingratitude that builds up because we desire what maybe somebody else had. Or we look at like, man, the way that my friend, raises their kids, they do such a much better job than me. And so all of a sudden we're like ungrateful for, like our family and the things that we have in our lives already. So like, I think it happens like that, or we look at, our best friend's marriage, it looks better. And, oh man, I don't have the kind of friendships that this dude has. And so all of a sudden we get ungrateful for what we already possess. And so I put it this way, is it like when we start getting into like that ungratefulness, it's because we focus more on what we don't have than paying attention and being grateful for what we already hold in our hands that like God has placed in our lives. And so we were talking about that a little bit, and really what we were talking about is like in Ephesians 5:20, and I'm actually going to type it right here because I have a bot set up. But in Ephesians 5:20, in the chat, the bot's not working. In Ephesians 5:20, it literally says to give thanks always and for everything. And so in Leviticus, my main kind of point from our sermon was this: in Leviticus 7, verse 11 through 13, there's this like instruction to give like this offering, right? Back in the Old Testament, they had all these kind of rules and laws and orders and routines. And so they were instructed to give this like thanks offering to God. And it said to use unleavened bread. But at the very end in verse 13, it says that your thanks offering should also include leavened bread made with yeast. Now that's significant because all throughout the Bible, 22 times in the Old Testament and 17 times in the New Testament of the Bible, leaven or yeast was used to signify something sinful or evil. So it makes me ask this question, like, why in this instruction from God did he also include something that the people knew to be bad or negative? And I think it's because of Ephesians 5:20. I think we are called to be thankful for all things. It's really easy to be grateful for the promotion at work. It's really easy to be grateful for the bonus that we got from our jobs. But what about like when we got in the fender bender after work? Like that's kind of tough to give thanks for. That's not something we immediately pause to give thanks for. But here's why it's significant, because in James chapter 2, verse 2 through 4, or James chapter 1, 2 through 4, it literally says to consider it all joy when you face trials of many kinds, because you know that God is creating like perseverance inside of you. And so my kind of main point was this, that we want to be grateful for the really good things, but we also could be grateful for the less than pleasant things, because we can trust in this promise that God is going to use it for a greater purpose, and that we can be grateful at all times.